Welcome to a new episode of Battleground Chats. Today, I'm really pleased to have James NG with me. And James and I have known each other since about 2009 when he joined Deloitte. I was on my partner journey. We were there together for a few years, and then we separated, went our different ways, and came together where we met at a crisis exercise. But we'll get to that. But James, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for the opportunity to spend some time with you, Craig, and it's always good to reconnect and reminisce about the past and where we started our journey together at Deloitte.
Exactly. So you started at Deloitte. We were in the tech risk area together. I was doing business continuity. You were doing more like IT audits, if I recall. But how did you get from Deloitte IT audit into the CISO role that you're in today? What's the journey? What can we take away from how you've transformed yourself?
Yeah, no, I'm more than happy to share a little bit about my journey, Craig, and it's been for me a really fulfilling one, an interesting one thus far, and I'm really fortunate to have had great opportunities, met some amazing people, and really had no regrets, to be honest, in terms of all of those changes throughout. I actually studied a Bachelor of IT at university, and that also included, which was really beneficial, some industry-based learning. So if you recall, Craig, at Deloitte, there was actually IBL programs. I didn't come through the IBL program at Deloitte, but it did give me some professional exposure and work experience, so to speak, at a couple of different organizations, which held me in good stead. But in terms of how did I actually land at Deloitte, and it's a really funny one because I think Deloitte was running a careers fair at the university, and I remember listening in, and it was specifically Deloitte, and they had each of the service lines sort of presenting, and I remember the consulting team went up and spoke and talked about all the amazing complex projects they worked on, and some of the clients
as they do,
as they do, and everyone was blown away. And I remember just, going, after their talks, you looked at all the tables, and the sort of the line around the consulting table was massive. And then I looked at this other table. I'm like, what's this table? Is it risk services was there? And there wasn't as many people. And I was like, well, through just a numbers game, I'm going to have a much better chance, applying for Deloitte, going to risk services. So that's a bit of a funny story around how I.
And that's hilarious. I was probably there at the career fair. Who knows?
That's how I landed in risk services. But I mean, like, if I look about and reflect about my time in Deloitte, and we talked about audit, and I actually did some of the consulting advisory engagements as well. And really the benefit there was sort of getting a variety of work, working with really smart individuals, yourself included, having, sort of drilled into us that client focus as well. And sort of, I really enjoyed that. Got some opportunities to sort of work overseas as well on different clients as well. So the whole variety, different types of work pieces, and the pace was also, really exciting.
And I think that's one of the things about the Big Four, right? I'm a big advocate of training up in the Big Four because it gives you such a wide base to work from. It gives you amazing experiences. It gives you travel. And from there, you can branch out to other things, which I think is what happened to you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, spot on. Everything you just said, I'd absolutely echo. Anyone who asks me about, is Big Four or consulting a good place to start? And I always sort of recount my experience and all the benefit that I've gained from that and the learnings that I've taken from that as well. But, it's probably no surprise that I've stayed in touch with people throughout my time that I met at Deloitte. So when you start as a graduate in the programs, you're always very tight-knit. A lot of those connections have stayed with me to this day, which is fantastic. But you're right. I ended up branching out. So you sort of alluded to doing some of that audit work. I actually joined Tabcorp's internal audit team.
Okay.
Focusing on,
that's a bit of a change, yeah?
Yeah,
Great.
Focusing on technology audit. And if I combine that a little bit, I'm not necessarily as au fait in the gambling space. So it got me an opportunity. So whilst you're at Deloitte, you get to work on different clients. This gave me an opportunity to actually really understand an industry in a lot more detail. And so I really enjoyed that aspect. And in fact, my boss at the time at Tabcorp ended up moving to Telstra, and he reached out to me and asked if I was keen to follow him for the opportunity to join Telstra's internal audit team. And sort of I jumped across as part of that chance that sort of was presented to me. And look, I think some of the benefits, sometimes we look at audit and it feels a little bit old school, a little bit more archaic, a little bit more traditional. But I think similar to what we're talking about before, Craig, around audit gives you that visibility across an organisation. It gives you access to the enterprise. You get to really understand the inner workings, be able to connect the dots as well, help identify areas of improvement and work with different teams as well. So I feel like audit gives you almost like that sheriff badge.
Yeah, it's a really good way of putting it. Because I've met a lot of people along my journey who've started in audit, found something they've enjoyed because they have seen the wide areas and across the business, and then dived into it.
Yeah, 100%. And so that's where I've sort of taken it and run with it. And even at my time, sort of at Tabcorp and then subsequently at Telstra, when you get access to the enterprise, you also get to meet, all different varieties of people, work with different leaders as well. I was fortunate to have an opportunity to do a secondment in Telstra's international business based out of Hong Kong. For a period of time, which was great to learn a different part of the business again, and get that exposure and experience as well. And sort of I did that for a period of time, and I think when I started to look at what's next, and you can look at it more traditionally in terms of, and this is probably not too indifferent to some of the firms as well, sort of like you start off as a grad and then go to an analyst, senior manager,
you grow, exactly,
etc. But I was at this bit of a thinking and reflection, or maybe an inflection point around, well, is that the pathway I want to keep going on, or what else is out there? And part of that itch that I was looking at scratching was, when you do audits, you often go around the organisation and you find areas of improvement. But because you need to sort of manage a level of independence or an arm's length, you actually can't necessarily be involved in the implementation or the remediation of what you identify. And so there'd be times where you do these audits, and you work with the business, you try and provide some recommendations and guide them and steer them, but you'd come back 12 months later and you'd find that what had been done probably wasn't necessarily what you were initially envisaging or had in mind, or they didn't get around to fixing it, etc. So it got me thinking, I'm like, I wouldn't mind actually being involved in
on the other side.
Yeah, correct. On the other side, actually fixing some of these things. So I actually started to, building on, and this is where you start to look at how you springboard from your different roles and your experience, but building on the relationships and the connections I'd built whilst auditing, started to reach out to those leaders and started to discuss what opportunities on the other side might look like. And a particular area I was passionate about was around security. At that time was more known as information security as opposed to the nominal name as digital or cybersecurity now. But, was talking to the CISO at Telstra at the time, and also spoke with the chief risk officer, and they were sort of going, what's your motivations, etc. And I said, the same thing I just said before, Craig, which is I actually wouldn't mind fixing things.
Yeah, doing stuff. Yeah.
And they go, okay, well, what do you enjoy about audit? And I say, well, I really enjoy working with people, collaborating, engaging with them. And I really want to sort of get the opportunity to fix things. And so they're looking, they go, okay, so we've got someone who likes to work with people and fix things. Great combination. We need more of those people. Come on down. So that was actually my stepping stone or transition outside of, I guess, your more traditionalist risk and audit and compliance type
and
role.
Into cyber. But did you pick the cyber world, or it just was an opportunity that came?
No, it's probably a good nuance. I did pick it in that sense of I actually was proactive to outreach to those leaders to say I was interested in that space. So it wasn't the fact that they tapped me on the shoulder. It was me leveraging, as I said, those connections and relationships I'd built over the years of auditing to find out what opportunities may exist. And I think that's probably a key lesson, right? You can't necessarily wait for everything to land.
100%. That's where I was going to go. Yeah, 100%. You've got to use your networks. You've got to use them. I remember when I left the partnership at Deloitte, some advice that was given to me was the partners who leave who make it, in quotation marks, after are those that use their networks and reach out. Don't wait for something to come to you. You've got to be proactive. And it worked for you as well, right?
Yeah, it definitely did. And so for me, that I ended up moving into security. It was really funny, actually. One of the first things that they got me to do at the time, because they're like, oh, you came from that audit background and you wanted to leave that all behind. First thing what you do is actually do a review on how we engage with the rest of the business. Yeah. And I was like, so I'm doing an audit. But it was really combining, I guess, that whole collaboration piece, consulting.
But you could do the audit and fix it. That's the main difference, right?
Absolutely. And that's where the path that I sort of went around was to actually build something from scratch. We called it a business partnering capability when I was at Telstra. But if you think about it, it's really the way it was structured was almost like an internal consulting shop. So we would help stitch together the capabilities, the depth, the breadth that Telstra had from a security perspective and help deliver those services out into the organisation. So I was doing that on my own for a period of time, and it got to a point where there was a question of, well, do you either I need to reprioritise, drop some things, or the alternative was we actually grow and expand the capability, and actually, deliberately decided on the latter. So we ended up building a team around that to service the organisation.
And now fast forward, you've kind of dived into the cyber world. And in this cyber world, and I'm going to call it the cyber world for now, you have done some amazing things, and you've traveled the world, and you've joined forums and groups. But what is it about the cyber lens in the risk world that kind of interests you the most? And what are some of the really interesting, cool stuff you've done and learned along the way? Because it is a fascinating journey from audit and risk into cyber, and then to kind of forging your own path in that.
Yeah, and I think the security world, I mean, what's the cliche? No day is the same mentality. And I think that's what excites me is there's always something different happening in this space. It's moving rapidly. We talk that about technology, but I could, arguably say that definitely applies from a security perspective as well. And it's really the mission in terms of, I feel like it's one of the few areas or communities where everyone's very much aligned on. We've got a common foe or a common enemy that we can all rally behind. And that common enemy is not an internal team in another part of the organisation.
No.
It's those threat actors out there that are all like, we've got similar challenges and as I said, common threat groups that we're or adversaries that we're against. And I think that builds a level of camaraderie. And, you often hear that concept around team sport mentality. And I really enjoy that because we can collaborate not only within the organisations that we're part of, but more broadly as well. So talking about the forums and groups that I'm part of and fortunate to participate in, that's the sort of mentality that we bring. So I feel like there's never been an issue where I've been able to reach out to a peer or a colleague outside and not get a response.
Because it's not a competitive thing, is it? It's not like, I can't talk to a competitor, but because you actually got the same threat actors, you've got the same threats going on, which is quite a unique proposition.
Yeah, absolutely. And we don't, for me personally, I don't benefit from another organisation getting breached or impacted. It doesn't make me feel good. It doesn't actually help us in any way, shape or form. So for us, and this is the probably difference, especially when you're talking about working with other, in our space now in financial services, in other areas, sure, you might be competitors, but in this space, we aren't in competition. So in that way, we should be really supporting and getting behind each other.
Yeah, great. Okay, so to wrap up, what is kind of the one or two takeaways for the audience around if you want to move into the cyber and security world, or you're already there and you're thinking, what's next or how do I get involved? What's a big key learning you've had in your journey to give over to our audience?
Yeah, and I can only speak for myself, but hopefully it's of relevance and benefit to your listeners, is very much around mentoring and networking and connections. And so even if you think about early on in my career, moving from Tabcorp to Telstra, that's because my boss was there. Moving from audit into security, that's because of the relationships that I'd built over the years. And so I think there's that element of making sure that you stay connected. And as I said, security is a great place to do that because we are a community that supports each other. And then the other element is very much to be the driver of your own destiny. So while sometimes things are right place, right time, other elements.
But you create that. I think you create the right place, right time.
Got to make your own luck sometimes, Craig. And I think that's been beneficial or held me in good stead throughout as well.
So, well, that's fascinating, and it's been great to reconnect, right? We lost connection for a few years and then crossed paths again, and so it's been great to reconnect, James, and thank you for being on Battleground Chats.
Thanks for the opportunity and for the chat, Craig.